Hey folks, it's Mira Dessy, the ingredient guru, and I am so excited. I am here to talk with you today about this new practice that I learned about back in April when I attended the Transformation Summit. It's called body typing. And body typing is not a new thing. It's been around for a long time. There are lots of different body typing modalities, but this one really kind of blew my mind. And I've been incorporating it into the work that I'm doing, and I find that it's really fascinating. People respond really well to it. And so I reached out to my good friend, Amy Rawls. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
And and Amy is the clinical director at Transformation Enzyme Corporation, and she is going to talk with us, tell us a little bit more, explain what it is, how we can use it, and what the benefits are. And so we're just going to dive right in.
Sure, great.
So how are you today?
I'm doing well. Enjoying the actual fall weather here in Houston, Texas. It actually feels like fall, and it's not 90+ degrees outside. So today's a great day. I'm getting to wear my scarf. So
I know we're both wearing sweaters and scarves.
I know, it's nice to actually get to have a season and dress for the season for once.
That's right. That's right.
Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually this is a perfect time, the fall, although I mean this is going to be recorded, so who knows when somebody else might be watching it as well, but fall is definitely also a really good time to talk about body typing, because there are so many things that we need to know about how our digestive system works and what's going on so that we can eat to nourish our bodies. I'd love it if you could just explain the theory behind what is biochemical individual body typing. Like what's the theory behind that?
Right. So it's kind of like you said, body typing is not anything new. We've been doing it for over 5,000 years, back as far as when the Egyptians were doing it. So the body typing that Dr. Fuller, kind of mimicked some of this stuff off of was based on some of the older methodologies out there. However, she took it a step further with implementing the digestive tract and using enzymes as well. So biochemical individualism allows us to identify what that person needs from a digestive level based on specific things, observations that she made in her 30+ years of clinical practice. So for example, one of the major reasons that we were able to kind of narrow down the specific body types and figure out what they need is because when their digestive system's off track, they lack specific enzymes, and it was creating these specific health conditions. So body typing as a whole is what we do. We look at what the person's food cravings are, and that allows us to really determine what nutrients they're lacking. And the reason you lack nutrients is because you can't digest and absorb them efficiently, or you're simply not eating them. But that's not true, because the foods that these people really liked, they were eating them, they just weren't breaking them down properly. And that helped us identify what enzyme deficiency they had. Other observations, that we had, we look at personality types. So there are specific personality characteristics of these specific body types that all align. And the big thing that was actually proven scientifically to really validate the program, because a lot of it was, figured out through observation. Dr. Fuller was able to identify as far as the nutrient deficiencies people were having or the enzymes they were lacking, doing her colonic therapies on individuals. And she was noticing that these specific individuals, based on, whatever type she was suspecting they had the same consistent food particles in their stool when she would do their colonics. So for example, paras, she would see a lot of undigested carbohydrates. Whereas with supras, she would find that they were very mucousy, and she could find traces of undigested protein in their stool. So things like that was how she was able to kind of figure out what foods people weren't digesting. She was able to identify that through their food preferences as well as what was in their stool. Now the bone measurement, so you went to the workshop, and we'll talk about measuring, but the reason the bone is so important is because we actually were able to validify the body typing using the DEXA machine. So the DEXA machine is known to measure the bone density of the body, but DicQie used it so she could really look at measuring the exact bone structure of the body, meaning where people's clavicles and their hip bones were. And she was able to verify using the DEXA machine that individuals that had specific clavicle and hip bone measurements, it aligned with their food preferences, their personality traits, and their enzyme deficiencies. So the DEXA is what really brought it home as far as validifying the biochemical individualism that we use. And then obviously using it for 25, 30 years now, it's been a very effective tool at really individualizing your care plan for a person. So a lot of practitioners, I know for me, before I knew about body typing, you know, I would try some. So all right, a great example, keto, right? So I was getting on that keto bandwagon now. Keto is great, and I think it has a lot of therapeutic properties to it, and it can be very beneficial for some. However, there are specific body types that do not break down fat properly, and they do not digest fat properly. So what does that mean? That diet's actually going to create more inflammation in those individuals. And that's why you'll have some people that keto is just, it's working great for them. They've lost 50 plus pounds. They feel great. However, there's going to be some, which we'll get into that, what body type that is. And we've actually trialed it here at Transformation with those body types. They feel worse, they don't lose weight, and they get more inflamed everywhere. They get more achy, that kind of thing. So it's really cool in that aspect. So what I like about body typing is it allows you to, one, make your therapy individualistic for that person, because nutrition is the most individualized thing. It's the most individualized field out there. No one person is alike. What body typing allows you to do is really identify what therapy is going to work best. If you look at the history of diets, you know, there's the vegetarian, you know, there's all these vegetarian diets, there's the Mediterranean, there's paleo, there's keto.
Well, and now there's the Nordic diet.
Right,
and
right.
Yeah, I mean, they're always coming up with new dietary theories.
Right. And what's interesting, once you really understand, you learn about body typing, and then you look at who created these diets, it's because these people that created these diets, they're that type that needs that type of diet. That's why the diet works so well for them.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it doesn't work for everyone. So that's kind of what body typing allows you to do. It allows you to really individualize your therapy. If you're not using, you know, enzymes in your practice, you should be, but it really allows you to determine what digestive components that person is missing and where your therapy should start.
So can you talk for a second about what the different body types are?
Yes. So there are 4 different body types. There is your type 1, which is your para. The paras are your group of, I'm a para, and Mira, you're a para also.
I'm here too.
Paras, we have a lot of trouble with carbohydrates. We would love to be vegetarians. However, those are the vegetables, carbohydrates in general give us the most trouble. So that's your type 1. We lack polysaccharidic enzymes. You know, and do you want me to get into like all the different health, you want to wait on the health conditions?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, right now, let's just talk about what are the different body types.
Okay.
And,
so, yeah, there's your para, which is your type 1. Para is for parathyroid, because that's typically where they're going to have issues. Your type 2 is your estro or testro. Estro for women, testro for males. These people tend to have a lot of endocrine issues. So that's where the estro testro comes in, from like estrogen, testosterone regulation issues. Then there are your type 3s. These are your supras, which stands for suprarenal or supraadrenal. These individuals have they have endocrine disruptor issues as well, but mainly with the adrenals. Mm-hmm. And then there is your type 4, which is your neuro, which is more of a nervous system component with them. They tend to be the most unbalanced out of everyone, and they have they kind of have health issues all over the spectrum. But it's really more of a neurological thing with your type 4s for them. So those are the actual 4 types.
And you know, one of the things that I wanted to address, by the way, because I was blown away at the seminar when I learned this. First of all, I mean, obviously we inherit our genetics from our parents, but you do not inherit your body type from a parent.
Right.
Your body type simply is your body type. It's how you're formed. And the other piece to that, which I thought was really crazy, was, well, there's 2 more things. One is that the digestive tract is formed between 9 and 12 weeks of gestation. I did not know that. And that, like, once it's done, never changes. So that was kind of wild. And that by using clavicle and hip width, it doesn't matter how heavy or underweight someone is, those two measurements never change in your lifetime. And so that is why Dr. Fuller-Linney was using that as her measurement.
Right, because before she used to use, you know, and once you learn about the types, the 4 specific types, what's really kind of funny and it really helps break the ice when you're doing the assessments, the shape of the butt.
Yes, that's right, gluteal confirmation.
Determines what type. So like, for example, paras have really high perky buttocks, whereas estros and testros are going to have that lower swung flat buttock. Supras, they're the body type they have. It's just like a straight up and down board. And neuros don't have a buttock either. They're just also more up and down. But that's how Dr. Fuller used to do it. She would just look, you could look at their butt and tell. But nowadays, we have people that are getting butt implants. We have people that, you know, people are doing, I know a lot of supras that they work out 6 to 7 days a week. And out of those 5 days, they're doing something for their glutes, you know. So they have somewhat of a butt, but they have to work very, very hard. Whereas a para, we can do nothing, and we're always going to have somewhat of a perky, round bubble butt, if you will.
Well, and she said it sits a little bit higher too.
Higher. So the place of where it sits, and that, you know, now it's so fun because once you learn about body typing, you do it everywhere. I mean, even my husband, he's like, what do you think they are? I'm like, well, you know, and so because there's also looking at the shoulders. There's lots of different physical things you can look at without even talking to them to kind of have an idea of what they are.
Well, and one of the things that I had to stop myself from doing this because it got to be a little overwhelming, but at the grocery store, looking at people and then looking at their carts. Yeah,
and seeing what's in there. Exactly. And some have learned how to eat for their type already, so it might align with them. But a lot of them, yeah, they're eating the foods they like, or whatever fad diet they think is good for them. And then you look at them and it's like, oh no.
That's not right.
That's not gonna be good. But this is what brought the DEXA into play. The reason we do bone, because the more out of balance a person is, the more they're going to blend into all of the different 4 types, right? So, you know, for example, if someone's really out of balance, so we have a questionnaire we use for the body typing. You saw it at the thing. And the first part of the questionnaire, it asks you about food preferences. Well, some of these people, when they're really out of whack, they are circling all of them. They're circling everything. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really know because you like everything. And sometimes that's just, they like everything, but a lot of times that's an indication that they're out of balance. Because when we have one primary type, but a lot of us will develop a secondary. So for example, my primary is para, but my secondary is estro. But no matter what, you treat for the primary. Right. So, you know, due to imbalances, it was hard to determine what specific type they were using just their food preferences. We could look, you know, the other thing with the DEXA that we really should have looked more into was where we stored fat in our body, but that can change. So let's say we're actually a para, right? And para is just, you know, I'll talk about it more, but they store weight all over. If they gain weight, they gain it evenly all over. You really can't tell. Whereas, for example, an estro, they gain in their hips and legs. So these are the people that you see with the really tiny upper body. And when they walk away from you, like I tell you, like I always say, they're packing down there. They have a wide rear end and they have those thick thighs, but they carry their weight in their hips and thighs, and they typically don't ever gain weight up top. Usually they're having to buy pants a size larger than their top, that type of thing. But the DEXA showed us where these people carried their fat. And that's really with body typing, that's what you're looking at too. However, if you're a para and you normally carry your weight all over, but your hormones start getting out of whack and there comes that secondary, you know, maybe you're getting more of an estro effect, then where you store fat isn't going to be true to what you really are. Because if your hormones are out of whack for a woman, we're going to typically store it in our belly and our hips and our thighs, you know, so it won't disperse evenly. So just even looking at where fat is stored isn't always going to be accurate because people can manipulate that. So basically, in a nutshell, all the different things we look at to determine a body type, all of them can somewhat be manipulated with the exception of the bone. The bone structure never changes. From the time you're born to the day you die, your clavicle and your hip bones stay the same distance, no matter how big you get. Even with, birth, they might get a little bit wider, but
Yeah.
it's still going to be.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you and I are both prime examples of that. We both had kids,
Right.
but it's still very easy to
Yeah.
measure and see.
Yeah, I'm still lined up, So, and that's what the DEXA did. It allowed us to get down to the micromillimeter of how far apart these people's collar and hip bones were, which was actually really cool to use too, because it's very hard to measure someone. It is hard to measure people as they're heavier, because it can be harder to find the hip bone, but it's possible to do. And, there's a lot of people that are really heavy. It's hard to body type because they're kind of, all over. So it's hard to determine, well, do they really have a perky butt, or is it just that their obesity, that type of thing. So that's why the measuring is so important, and really the telltale. So you always really kind of start there. And then you can tie the questionnaire that we have into it to kind of support what you're doing, and get the care plan right for them.
And so can you talk a little bit, because this was also very fascinating, I thought, about the enzymes, because those, a lot of people may be using enzymes in their practice because they're using digestive enzymes, or they know that, proteolytic enzymes or different things, but there's like very specific enzyme formulations for each of the body types to address their bio-individual need. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. So we'll start with the paras. So again, paras typically, their enzyme deficiency is going to be polysaccharidic enzymes, which are, again, are for the proper digestion of carbohydrates. Their food preferences, again, are going to be carbs. They have to have something sweet. And the reason they crave carbs is because they don't break them down very good. So we tend to, if you do a micronutrient on a para, we tend to be deficient in B's. We tend to have issues with protein, amino acids, because we don't like protein. If we eat, if we have our plate in front of us, we're eating the veggies first, the protein comes last. We could go without it. Unless there are pairs, there might be pairs out there saying, well, no, I eat my meat, but that's because you've learned you need to do that. But if we went with our natural style without having any knowledge of anything, that's where we'll go. Like, I was thinking of it the other day, my breakfast when I was just going into college, before I had any, plus it's a lot, so don't judge me, okay? But it was a bowl of Special K. I would have those Nutri-Grain granola bars and a yogurt.
Yeah.
Nothing but sugar and carbohydrate, no protein, all that. That's just what I did. Now obviously it's eggs and I have veggies, that kind of thing, but I've learned to eat for my type. But again, and that's because our enzyme deficiency is those polysaccharidics. And when you have, an enzyme deficiency, it's going to lead to a nutrient deficiency, and that's where the health concerns come in. That's why paras, we tend to have thyroid disorders, because, well, the thyroid needs protein to make its main hormone that it needs to work. Is it thyroxine?
Yes.
Yeah, it needs protein for thyroxine. And we don't eat a lot of protein. So that's where you'll see a lot of thyroid deficiencies. Eczema, we have headaches, paras tend to have more fatigue, blood pressure, hypoglycemia, brain fog, those types of things. And when you get them in balance, a lot of those things will correct themselves. So, as far as what enzymes we recommend for each type, at Transformation, we have 4 different digestives that we can offer people. For all the body types, what you'll find is we recommend the same digestive, because it is our most comprehensive and it covers the needs of everyone. That's why it's our #1 seller. The reason it's so good for a para is because it has 12 different polysaccharidic enzymes in it, as well as a really good blend of digestive proteases and a high amount of lipase, which is going to help with the breakdown of fat. So it's really a complete one, but it's going to cover all of those carbohydrates and fibers and sugars that are going to come from the plants that we eat, that our body doesn't make. So that's why the digest is such a good one for a para, because of that polysaccharidic blend. Now, a para could also benefit too from the Carbo G. Before we made it Carbo G, it was actually just Carbo. DicQie had formulated it to be more of a vegetarian enzyme. The Carbo G is cool because it has the enzymes in it that help your body break down lectins.
Uh-huh.
those undigestible proteins in, like our legumes, that type of thing. And it has the DPP4. So the Carbo-G is actually a really good one from that aspect too. And it also has 12 different polysaccharides in it. So from the body type standpoint, a para, you're going to want something with a good blend of polysaccharides. And when I've looked at other enzymes out there, the blend of the polysaccharides they're using isn't quite as efficient as what we feel it should be, or it doesn't have hardly any. It just has a lot of amylase. And well, that's not enough. We make amylase. We need enzymes that are going to help us break down all the different fibers and the different sugars and stuff that are in plants, like cellulase and pectinase and those types of things.
That's very cool.
So,
Well, and so if someone wanted to incorporate these into the work that they're doing, obviously you've got all the handouts and everything to be able to help them. As a matter of fact, I brought mine downstairs for parents. That's my body type. So you have this cute little booklet, and then you have this little prescription that people can use. But if they wanted to learn how to do body typing, how to incorporate it, or even how to get themselves assessed to figure it out, what would they do?
Okay, so there's a few things. So you went to the workshop this year. What we've decided here at Transformation as part of our education initiative, we're going to be offering 2 body type workshops next year. We're going to be doing one here in Texas, and then I think we're going to take one on the road, so we can hit more people. But that's one avenue there. The workshop is 1 day, and it's super affordable. I think our early bird is $79 is what we're going to be charging, and that includes lunch.
It was great too. It was
I mean,
took that too.
Yeah. So that's the first thing you can do. And the good thing about the workshop is, as you learned, you get all the materials you need to put it into practice. So at Transformation, we've really trademarked this and made it ours. We have booklets, again, for all the different types. So for type 1, type 2, that you can use to give to your patient once you identify their type. We have the questionnaires for you. The workshop, the way the workshop works is the beginning of it, we go into like the history of body typing, and then we get into what it actually is and how you identify people. We do interactive measuring where we'll have, Dr. Fuller's going to be there again this year, and we'll be pulling people up from the audience and measuring you and really kind of blowing your mind, because it's crazy when you body type someone, they feel like you're almost like a psychic. It's like, how did you know that about me? So I can measure someone and literally be like, you like to do this, don't you? You're usually pretty timid, aren't you? Or if you're a para, you're more outgoing, whereas the supras, they're the drivers, they're the people that are more to the point, not very patient, that type of thing. So you can really read somebody, and it really helps, get them really excited about it and really into the program. But so that's what it's the history. Then we go into what it is and how to do it. And then we actually do the live, bringing people up, showing you how to actually measure people with the little scapula tool we use. And then we go into the different foods. So we kind of give you all that. And then at the end, we go over how to implement it into practice. Mm-hmm. So we actually provide, if you do the workshop, we provide you with a flash drive that basically has all the tools you'll need to do it. So like the brochure, the little, the questionnaire, booklets, that type of thing, that can all be purchased for you to just go right out and do it. So yeah, there's that. And then another way, a great thing you can do is we have a webinar on it. We actually have a body typing webinar that talks about it and can kind of get you started. And just, I guess, from more of a learning standpoint, is Dr. Fuller's book as well, The Healing Power of Enzymes.
Yeah, no, that's a great book. And you know what? If you'll send me the link, I'll put the link to the webinar down below and a link to the book as well.
So I'm going to send Mira a link for webinar.
Yeah. And The Healing Power of Enzymes, by the way, folks, is just a really, really great book. I've had that book for years, and I still refer back to it because there's just so much information in there. And I think, we tend to forget sometimes about the importance of enzymes in terms of how they really support the body, and how, as we age especially, we need more enzymatic support, because of just, I mean, that's a natural part of our body function, but we don't make as much. And then if we have impact because of environmental stressors or dietary stressors or health issues or whatever, that can further deplete our system. So being able to add those enzymes back in really helps us to have optimal health. And when we learn to do that for ourselves, we can learn to do that for our clients.
Right, right. Yeah, the book was huge for me. I got the book before I even started working for Transformation, I had my own practice back in Beaumont. And I got the book and I just couldn't put it down. Because as a dietitian, guess what? We never talked about in school.
No, yeah.
Enzymes, ever. And I went to school for 6 years. I have a master's in this, and we hardly talked about it. So many people focus we focus on food first, which is always number one. But what we're forgetting to do as practitioners is asking ourselves, is their digestive tract capable of breaking that stuff down and utilizing it? I'm telling you, like, you wouldn't believe, I mean, there's a lot of contributing factors to food allergies and things like that, but you know how many food allergies we correct by using enzymes? The reason you're getting this autoimmune reaction is because your body is not breaking the food down properly. I mean, broccoli should not create an autoimmune response.
Yeah.
These foods that are supposed to be natural and good for our bodies, we shouldn't be having autoimmune reactions to them. So the first place you got to look is, okay, I know this person needs to use food as medicine, and that's great. But before they can use food as medicine, we have to make sure that the food we're using to heal is not creating more inflammation. Because let me tell you, folks, if they're eating this really good food and not breaking it down, you're only creating more inflammation.
Right.
You know,
and then that paves the way for, other things to be added into the mix that also increase the inflammation or whatever. So we really do need to.
Right. And now that we're seeing so much leaky gut, I mean, they're throwing that out. I mean, who doesn't have leaky gut these days? Unless we live in this utopic world where there is no stress, where there are no GMOs, where there is nothing but real food, and, we don't have all these environmental toxins and all these different stressors. Guess what? We don't live in that. And until we have that, you're most likely going to need to support the digestive tract, So not everyone's a believer that you need enzymes. I'm a big believer just in the effects that it had on my own health personally, and the effects I saw on patients in my practice, coming out with that first. But they were a huge part, and it's really important in getting people back into balance as far as their different health conditions. So we didn't go into all the different types, but making sure that no matter what type you're dealing with, making sure they have a digestive, that proteolytic piece, and a probiotic are always the first steps in getting someone back into balance if their digestive system is off track. Because we know that 95% of disease is linked to the gut, and we believe that with nutrition and enzyme therapy, we can reverse 95% of disease.
Sure. So, and when you add in the simplicity of body type, because once you learn how to do it, like you said, you just be anywhere, airport, grocery store, library, and you're looking at people, you're like, yup. Yeah. And so once you learn how to incorporate that into your practice, it just gives you one more tool to help support your clients, because the goal obviously is to help people get healthy. And so the more we can incorporate, in terms of what we do for them. It's like the work that I do, as the ingredient guru. I'm like, food is great, but we have to take it down to that foundational level. It's not just what you eat, it's what's in what you eat. And so it's not just the foods that we're feeding them, it's how are we supporting their digestive function so that they can properly absorb and utilize what we're giving them, what we're feeding them. So it becomes just another piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Supporting the immune system, that whole gamut of different things. So definitely it's a big part of it. So
well, that sounds really great. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for explaining everything, Amy. I always love chatting with you. And folks, I'm going to put the information down below so you'll be able to click through. And if you have any questions, if you'll tag Amy down below, she'll be able to answer those for you, and we will move forward from there. But thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.